Hi everyone, this is Aga from EurekaCrystalBeads.com and I'm here with another fun beading tutorial for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and don't forget about the notification bell so you never miss any of our new content. So in this video, we'll be making these earrings. It's quite a complex pattern, you could think, but actually it's very easy to make. You just need to follow certain steps and then you basically just go around until you've finished. So let me tell you a little bit about the beads that you're gonna need. And all of the beads in these earrings, including the tubes, including the check glass, the beams, the seed beads, they are all included in our Merry Mistletoe ornament cover kit. And if you're watching this in July of 2024, we just released 2 new colorways because so far last year we did the red, the green, and the blue, the basics. But this year, by popular demand, we also released a silver and a gold colorway. Generally, the kit is intended for this particular pattern that we also have a tutorial for, and that will be linked down in the description. But since it's July and middle of summer, why not try and make something different like jewelry out of it, and it will also look very nice and perhaps more useful in the summer. And as I said, all of these beads are in the Merry Mistletoe ornament kit by Eureka Crystal Beads. Although due to the Bicones, you will only be able to make either this or the earrings with one kit. So if you want to make both, I recommend that you get 2 kits or a kit and an extra mix of Bicones, because that's the one bead that you will most definitely run out of if you try to make both of these. Or, just like I did, get 2 kits, one for the silver and one for the gold colorway, and you'll be set. You can make one thing in gold, one in silver, and enjoy both of them. So these earrings will actually use all of the beads from the kit except for the super duos. And if you're watching this at a different time or you just want to make the earrings and you don't want to get a kit, this is what you're going to need. You're going to need Ginkgo beads, 16 of them. You're going to need Bicones, and I'm using 3mm Bicones, 4mm Bicones, and 1 6mm Bicone, which you can substitute for another 6mm bead, but you probably will have to experiment a bit. So I do recommend our size mixes because we do have a few. These are Czech Preciosa Crystal Bicones. Then you're gonna need some beam beads. Here I also have 2 bugle beads. These are 9mm bugles, and I use 2 of them just so I use all or almost all beads from the kit. So 2 bugles, and when it comes to seed beads, here I have a 15-0s, 8-0s, and 11-0s. I have the 8-0s in between my 11-0s and 15-0s because I don't want to get these 2 mixed up. And when it comes to silver line crystal, you can get confused pretty easily. So I do recommend you divide them with something so that you don't mix the 11-0s and the 15-0s. And that's it when it comes to beads. You're obviously going to need some earring finding, and here I have this sterling silver French ear wire with a ball. Pretty simple, but I think it matches the entire vibe quite nicely. And this is not in the kit since, as I said, the kit is for an ornament cover mainly. And in addition to that, you're going to need a needle. I do recommend a size 12 because it will be easier to go through all of the beads multiple times. And when it comes to thread, I do recommend Fireline because it will result in a slightly stiffer piece. This is still kind of flexible, but it is flat, so it will always come back to its shape. And when it comes to thread, I do recommend 6 lb or even 8 for that stiffer result. Okay, why don't we start beading? In general, we're going to be doing 7 sections in a circle, so I'm going to be using 7 Ginkgos, 7 3mm Bicones, 7 8-0s also for this first row. And the first thing you do, of course, I do recommend checking the holes of your 2-hole beads. So we're gonna start by going through this Ginkgo bead, whichever hole. What's important is that you go from the wide rounded side towards that narrow side. And for the amount of thread, I do recommend about half a wingspan, a little bit more than half a wingspan. However long is comfortable for you. You're probably going to have to come back for the tail thread, so I'm not going to cut it because I prefer when I run out of thread to have a tail thread that I can comfortably come back to when I run out of this, and I can just continue with my tail thread. So we'll see how much the slightly more than half a wingspan lasts us. So this is where my thread is coming out of, and now I'm going to pick up 15, 3mm bicone, and another 15. Then I'm gonna go in with my second Ginkgo bead, and I'm gonna go down one of its holes the opposite direction now, so from the narrow side to the wide rounded side. And while I'm at it, I can just go straight up again through the hole of the first Ginkgo the same way I started, because we're essentially connecting them by making like a circle with our thread. Just like that. I am now going to go again through 3 of these beads, so 15, 3mm bicone 15, then down through this Ginkgo bead, exact same way that I came in the first time. As you see, I'm holding on to the tail thread. I kind of wrapped it around my fingers so that everything is nice and sturdy. You can also start with a stopper bead. And now I'm going to connect the 2 holes of this Ginkgo bead. So I'm going to be going into the same Ginkgo bead with 11, 8, and 11. And I'm going up the second hole of the Ginkgo bead. This is what we want. And now I'm doing the same thing as that first time where I picked the Ginkgo. So I'm adding a 15, a 3mm bicone, and a 15. I'm picking up another Ginkgo bead, and I'm going down one of its holes from the narrow side to the wider rounded side. And I'm connecting the 2 Ginkgo beads right away. No beads added. Just like that. Now going through that first half of that circle again. And this time, I'm going to go through the 11 from the previous sequence that I added, because these 2 Ginkgos are going to share this 11 between them in the center. So now I already have my 11 down here, so I need to add an 8 and another 11 then, and go up the other hole of the same Ginkgo bead. Just like that. You may notice that we're starting to make a circular pattern. Now again, 15, 3mm bicone 15, picking up another Ginkgo bead from the narrow side to the wide side, and up again through that previous Ginkgo bead, connecting them. And you do that same thing 7 times. And don't forget that this 11 here is shared. Alright, I've added my last Ginkgo bead, and now I'm going to be connecting it with the first one with a new sequence of 15, 3mm bicone 15, and I'm connecting it to the first one just like I normally would. So going down the 1 free hole, back up, and again down. Also down the shared 11, and right now I'm just missing one 8, because there's already an 11 in here that I can go ahead and go through and then go up this hole, because this 11 does not have a connection to this hole of this Ginkgo, this first one. And there we've made our starting circle. Now I'm just going to go back through these beads and down again so that I can connect the 8 O's inside the circle so that they are more sturdy and make more of a solid base for the entire design. So I went down to this 11, I'm going to go through one of the 8 O's, and I'm going to add 15 O's in between each of the white 8 O's in the middle. I'm gonna go through them again just to make the central circle even more of a stable base, even stiffer. So I'm going through the 8 O's and the 15 O's again. Alright, now as you can see, this already looks kind of cute, and honestly, I wouldn't be mad if we just stopped here and added like an ear wire over here, made a loop around this bicone, and that will also be a lovely, lovely earring. But we're gonna go forward. One tip, if you like even more bling, this middle hole here is actually perfect for a 4mm bicone. So if you wanted, you could just, coming straight out of the 8/0, go into the 4mm and then down here, through all of these beads, back again through the 4mm and then the other way around. So that is attached with 2 threads in the middle of your work. I personally like this kind of empty middle. It makes the entire piece more open work, sort of, like a little bit of a lace. Alright, let's step up to start with a new row, and to do this coming out of the 8/0 right now. So I'll just go up the 11/0 that's above and through the Ginkgo, as well as the 15/0 and the 3mm bicone, and that's where we want to be to start the new row. Alright, this next row is actually going to be as simple as 4 15/0s, 1 8/0, 4 15/0s, and I'm gonna go through this next bicone in the next section here. My thread is coming out of this bicone towards left, so I'm gonna go left, and I'm just gonna connect these bicones with these sequences of 4 15/0s, 1 white 8/0, 4 15/0s, and I'm going to do this all around. Alright, that's the last sequence here that I'm adding. I'm gonna step up so that I am coming out of, and I will surprise you because not out of the 8/0, but out of the first 15/0 after the 8/0. So you want to be coming out of here, this first 15/0 that's after the 8/0. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pick up 2 15/0s, then a beam bead, and I'm gonna go through one of the outer holes. So there's 3 holes, and you wanna go through one of the ones that are on the outside, not the middle one. Then I'm gonna add 11/0, 8/0, 11/0, and I'm gonna go back down that same beam bead so that when you pull down, you get this little picot in the middle. And I went through the other of the outer holes, so the middle hole remains empty. And I'm going to pick up 2 more 15/0s and go through the next sequence of 15/0, 8/0, 15/0. So I am picking up this previous row by the first 15/0 before the 8/0. I go through that 15/0, the 8/0, and the 15/0 after it. I pull down, and this is what I got. And again, you do this all the way around. Again, just to repeat what we're doing, 2 15/0s, beam bead, outer hole, 11/0, 8/0, 11/0. You go back through the other outer hole in the beam bead. You pick up 2 more 15/0s and go through the next sequence like this into the 15/0 before the 8/0 right here. Alright, that's my last sequence in this row. I'm gonna pull tight. So I went through the 15/0, 8/0, 15/0, and I'm coming out of here. And now what I want to be coming out of is actually this hole of the beam bead. So I'm just going to step up these 2 15/0s and that hole of the beam bead. And we're actually going to be going in the opposite direction now. So we're going to be going this way as opposed to this way, which is the direction I was going. And now is a really fun part where everything kind of falls into place and is brought together. It is also, I think, the most complicated of the rows. So mind your beads. So what I pick up is the following: 11/0, 3mm bicone, 15/0, and 4mm bicone. And what I'll do now is, see, I'm right here at this gap. I'm actually going to hug this 8-0 right here, just the 8-0. I'm gonna go through it, and then I'm gonna go back again, just the 4mm bicone, so that it kind of stands up on top of this 8-0. Now, because the thread is white, it's not gonna be visible because the bead is also white. If you choose a different 8-0, I suggest perhaps this is the color of the thread that you should be using. Now I'm going to add this sequence here, but in reverse, so 15-0 first, then a 3mm bicone, and an 11-0. And I'm gonna go down this hole of the beam bead on the other side. Now a very fun little thing, we're gonna put an 8-0 in here, an 8-0 and two 15-0s actually, so I'm picking up a single 15-0, an 8-0, and you can go for the taller ones in this case. And when you're using toe holes, it's actually an advantage that they're not all uniform. Some of them are taller, some of them are shorter or more narrow, and I want the taller one. And we're going to hug this 3mm bicone. So we go through this 3mm bicone here in between the ginkgos. And again, just the bicone, and you do the same thing. So we want to stand up this 8-0, so I go through it again, just like that. I add another 15-0 and go through the other hole of the beam bead, the other outer hole, so the middle hole is empty all the while. And this is what you get. You kind of get an 8-0 that is standing up, and these two 15-0s create a sort of a lace pattern, I think, in this section. Now again, 11-0, 3mm bicone, 15-0, 4mm bicone. I pass through the 8-0 in here, then back up again through the 4mm bicone. I pull a little bit so that everything comes together, and then again 15-0, 3mm bicone, 11-0, and down the beam bead. And now you might have guessed, you do this all the way around, or until you run out of thread, which I'm about to do. So in a second I'll show you how to just go through all of these beads with this tail thread to complete your work. Alright, so at this point I'm actually running out of thread, so I just added my usual sequence. I'm gonna go down the beam bead here, but instead of adding the next bead, I'm gonna go through the two 15-0s back in here, and that's where I tie my knot. And I'll go through a couple of beads to hide it and to hide the thread. And it's time to use my tail thread that I have in here, and now I'm going to use less than half a wingspan, or half a wingspan if you just want to be safe. So I'm coming out of this ginkgo bead, and now I'm going to look at where I want to be coming out of. So my ideal scenario is my thread is coming down this beam bead so that I can add the next 8-0 in here. And to do that, I would have to get a little bit back. So I'm gonna go down this 11-0 and I'm gonna go back on this central circle. That's how you can find yourself in the right spot. And I'm gonna go up this 11-0 here. So that's one ginkgo closer to where I ended. And I'm gonna go up this side of the ginkgo, now up through this 11-0 and the 3mm bicone while I'm at it, so that I can go up this 8-0 that is already there. That's the last one that I added under the beam bead, and this already comes up here. So basically you just need to work your way up so that you can end up where you want to be. And now I'm just gonna go down this 4mm bicone again, go through this 8-0 up the bicone, just like I was adding it through the sequence, and now I'm exactly where I want to be. So down this beam bead here, and I can continue adding my sequences. So now that will be 15-0 and an 8-0. And then I'll just continue on my merry way. Alright, now this is the last 8-0 that I'm adding here. Coming up the beam bead, and now the easiest thing in the world, I just go forward through that last row that I added until I come out of the 15-0. That's right above the 4mm bicone that we kind of stood up on top of the 8-0. So there's a little gap, and you actually can fill this gap with an 8-0, and that will make it perfectly flat and will pop right in just like that. And you're actually going to go forward straight through the 3 beads on top of the beam bead. That used to be a picot, but now are gonna be slightly more straight, all 3 of them. And I'm actually going to go right through the 3 beads, the 11-0, the 3mm bicone, and the 15-0 in the next section. And I'm gonna add another 8-0 in this little gap over here. And why don't I just go through all of the beads, because right now we're creating a sort of a heptagonal, I would say, shape with the 8-0s, and they're just going to make everything work together great and refine this shape a little bit. So that's all super easy. You go through all of the beads right here on top of the beam bead and the next sequence that we added with a 3mm bead, and the 8-0s just pop right into place. And that's it, guys, we're almost there. We just need to add our ear wire on this super decorative kind of triangle here. So the way you do this, you actually start with the bead that you finished with. So I'm coming out of that first bead added in this spot, in this gap between the 15-0s on top of the 4mm bicone. This is where I'm coming out of. And I'm gonna pick up, now this is a long sequence, but this is what you pick up. An 11-0, one of the beam beads, another 11-0, then a ginkgo bead from the narrow side towards the wider rounded side, then an 11-0, an 8-0, then your ear wire, whichever way, because the earring looks the same from both sides, another 8-0, 11-0, and we're gonna go back through the other hole of this ginkgo bead here. You gotta be careful not to lose that ear wire now, right, like this. Same thing on the other side here. So it's going to be one 11-0, the bugle, and another 11-0, and we're gonna go through the next 8-0 on top of the 4mm bicone here. And now we have it, but we don't want to just have one thread inside of it. Besides, we still have that 6mm bicone to attach. And now we want to be coming out of the same bead in the other direction to like add this 6mm bicone and to make it a little bit more stiff. And we're gonna cheat a little bit, because the way I'll do it is I'm gonna go through the sequence with a 3mm bicone. Then I'm gonna go down the beam bead. I'm actually going to go up the second hole because incidentally they're also white. You won't see the thread. And I'm gonna go back through this 11-0 that's next to the 8-0 in the middle of the beam bead. In there I've just turned back around and I can go through the bicone 15-0 and 8-0. So I go up, I'm gonna go through the entire sequence again to reinforce it. So I'm going through the beads on top of that ginkgo. And on the other side, I'm going down the ginkgo and the 11-0. I'm pulling tight. Now I'm gonna add a single 15-0, then the 6mm bicone, and we're gonna do the same thing as we did with the other beads that we were putting up right. So I'm just going back up through the 6mm bicone, making it kind of stand up on top of this 8/0 in here. Now I'm gonna add another single 15/0, go back up through the 11/0 and through the Ginkgo. And now it's a great opportunity to go through all of these beads and the ear wire again. At this point, I'm going to tie a knot. And I'm gonna actually hide the knot in the bugle and weave in my tail. Now since I still have some thread left on my needle, I will just make a round through that last row of my earring just to make it a tiny little bit more stabilized and stiff. And the earring is ready. Let us know in the comments what you think of this pattern. I love especially how complex it looks as compared to how easy and quick it actually is if you just follow the right steps and use the right beads and not get an 11/0 mixed up with a 15/0. It's not cupping, it's not wavy, it's perfectly flat, and I really love them for that. They're rather on the larger side, but if you wear large earrings, you might like them. They are not heavy, they're lightweight because they're, completely flat and kind of open work. Don't forget to sign up for our email newsletter to get extra VIP content like a PDF pattern for these. We'll put a link to the sign up page for the newsletter in the description down below, as well as all the other useful links. All these materials, and maybe the kits if they're not sold out yet, can be found at eurekacrystalbeads.com. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!